I'm here with Dee Dee Von Smouth, whose father, Dr. David Von, created the technique for splitting corals into multiple fragments that really increases their growth.
So we started the organization at the beginning of 2019, right after Dave's retirement from research, to focus on practical application and scalability. And so that was the start of Plant a Million Corals. We received our first permits to hold corals in February of 2023, and we hit our 50,000 production mark on April of 2025.
Wow. And when do you think you'll hit a million?
Depends on how quickly we can make our tanks.
Yeah, I can hear that in the background. They're really working away at that.
So right now, we have 36 tanks, which supports over 50,000 corals.
Wow.
What's really exciting is our next steps. We've received funding from some family foundations as well as the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to expand our operations exponentially. So our first iteration will house an additional 72 tanks that will be able to support an additional 100,000 corals. Then we've got 2 other sets of greenhouses that in total we will be able to support over 420,000 corals here on Summerlin Farms.
So what's the turnaround in terms of, starting them here and then the microfragmentation and growing a little bit larger to putting them out on the reef?
Our hope is it'll be as little as 6 months. It could be as long as a year. It depends on the species of coral, because each species of coral grows at different rates. And it also depends in how we're going to be growing those corals. If we're going to be growing just individual plugs, or what our main focus is growing large coral heads that we fuse here at Summerlin Farms in Summerlin Key, and then we do that here, and then outplant large mature coral heads out onto the reef. But here's one of the neat things we're doing. We found with microfragmentation, because usually corals will compete with each other for space, but if they came from the same original coral, so if they were fragged from the same coral, they're the same genotype, they're essentially clones of each other, and they'll fuse together. So rather than trying to do that out in the field where they're susceptible to predation, there's competition with algae, sponges, tube worms, things like that. They also have added stressors such as extreme temperatures, maybe water quality issues, disease. We'll do that entire fusion process here in the nursery before we outplant. So we'll be outplanting large coral heads instead of individual plugs.
Okay.
So we could put 9 plugs on here and let them fuse together in about 12, 16 months. And then when a diver goes to outplant, they can just do that, and they've outplanted 9 corals.
By fragment?
Yes.
Microfragmentation. And your father kind of stumbled across that
He did.
process.
He did. The New York Times called it his eureka mistake.
We're disappointed on how slow early growth from an egg or a larvae really is. This disc with the pink and purple color has a couple of brown spots in the center. Each of those is an actual baby coral that is almost a half a year old. To see that it took 3 years to get to the size that we thought would be something worthwhile doing something with, that's what got me disappointed, that I literally took it off the higher level of the aquarium and put it on the bottom of the aquarium, thinking that this was no longer a process worth pursuing. And when I went to move that one, it broke. And I thought for sure that really was going to stress and hurt that coral. The few little polyps left behind in a pile of broken calcium carbonate skeleton, I think my statement was, these things are toast. They're not going to make it. 2 weeks later, went to check on it, and the piece that had the dime-size hole in it had completely grown back to the size that it was previously, and that size dime took it 2 years to produce from a larvae.
Well, we specifically select corals that have already been seen to thrive in those conditions. So whether that's corals that are rescued off of seawalls, construction sites, marinas, so they naturally occurred in these really terrible conditions, whether it's high turbidity, high temperatures, poor water quality, and then if there's a construction project, NOAA or other partners or ourselves will go in and collect them from that construction project and bring them back here and add that into our genetic diversity. Our main focus here are the boulder corals, so the brain corals, star corals, the corals that really make that large infrastructure on the reef. They're going to be the ones that are, they create the large habitat, protect from wave attenuation, things like that.
Now, I'm curious, the governor, DeSantis, has issued an executive order with a goal of recovering 25% of the Florida Reef, which stretches 350 miles.
Right.
Recovering 25% of that with living corals. Right now there's about 2%.
Right.
And his goal is by 2050, 50. Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. I think 2050 is a little bit too far away. Originally we had been talked about trying to set goals for 2030, but we're coming up on those quite quickly and only recently started to get the proper attention and support that I think organizations deserve. So 2050, absolutely, as long as we get to have our continued support, not only from the amazing communities that we're in, but from our politicians, from foundations, things like that.
We're talking about coral operations and reproduction. How scalable is it?
I think very scalable. These animals are one of these things that can put out 1 million babies if you put them in the right condition. Unfortunately, the crazy thing is a lot of these corals are just so far apart that when they do have that opportunity to make a lot of babies, they just don't see each other. We can create corals that are very resilient to the future and then cross them in the wild and let their babies go where they gotta go. Our ability to make it functional again by putting out artificial reefs, by selecting for very resilient genetics of corals, and by giving those corals a leg up by putting them on scaffoldings that make sense for them to survive, because they need all these other things, little fish and crabs that live kind of in a complex reef that's been diminished. If we can do both of those things, we can very quickly get back to a place where the corals are then replenishing themselves, creating a natural living scaffolding that then will protect us from the waves and provide the fish and the tourism and all the other benefits of having a reef.